you have confidence in each other, and when that's falling, it goes in.
Idaho always has run that the high hedge to catch out the ball.
Yeah.
Did you know from the scout that you were going to get a lot of pick and pop stuff and have opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, we watched a lot of film, and I watched a lot of film personally too. So I knew, if I was open, shoot that thing. So
when you're shooting like that in front, I mean, this was a season high crowd, and everybody's going crazy. I mean, for a guy like you that grew up around this program, what's that like?
Man, it makes me so happy. I mean, I'm just happy to be here where Montana across my chest have support from the Missoula community, the Montana community, best fan base in the country. And, it means a lot to me, But you can't get too high, you can't get too low, can't let the crowd play into effect. But it's pretty awesome when you hear them yelling and going crazy.
It's cool because we talk a lot, Coulter, about how the Montana kids are the drivers of the football program, but not and of women's basketball also in the state of Montana. But not in men's basketball. Not anymore. Once was the case, but it isn't as much anymore. That said, when you can find a guy who is a Montanan, who it does mean something more to have that name on there, who's also a very good player.
And whose father played here.
That's right.
Sean Sanderson's one of the top 20 scorers in program history.
Right, absolutely. So, I mean, you can hear it. I mean, he said it definitively, but you can also, it's not just lip service. I mean, that means a lot to him to be able to do this in his final season and transferring back in. And that's big time. And I think that is infectious, for lack of a better word, to other guys on the team who aren't from here, to freshmen who are playing here, and to see somebody who, this isn't just a D1 program that you settled on from, whatever, California, Arizona, whatever it is. This is something that matters very, very much to the people who are, involved in it. And any kid that's playing for a team at Division I college basketball, you assume cares about the program, cares about the game and all that. But we all understand, we're just from wherever we're from, and so to have a guy who is bringing that sense to it for Montana, and Kendall Manuel as well in his own right, having played elsewhere and returned to the state. I think that matters in a certain non-quantifiable way.
Well, there's no question, and I mean, you got to tread carefully a little bit here because, like you said, I mean, I think that this does mean a lot to a great many guys
for sure.
But I think if you're a Division I basketball recruit, even if you're just coming to a mid-major league like the Big Sky Conference, you were so good in high school.
No.
And I think a lot of guys, they get delusions of grandeur. And so when they're tearing it up at Montana, they think, well, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, I probably should have been in the Pac-12. I'm in the Big Sky. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. There's just a true, authentic joy that Jared Samuelson is playing with right now. I mean, after he hit his third three in a row, he runs back on defense, clapping, and he's skipping, he's giving the three, and you can just tell he's really, really enjoying himself. And it's really cool, too, that he left the program and came back. And it's an unorthodox story, and I think that he's making the most of it.
Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Coulter, the one thing to me that was definitive in this game was turnovers, but specifically for Montana steals. Idaho had 17 turnovers in this game. It's probably more than you want, but it's not an insane amount of turnovers. But 10 of those were steals by the University of Montana, which is a huge, huge number. I mean, the number of times that they were able to get their hands on the ball, whether it was just picking the pocket of a ball handler, taking a steal, coming up the floor, it was remarkable, really, to watch the defensive activity that the Grizzlies played with. I thought it was really impressive. They're playing with a lot of confidence right now. You asked Saeed Pridgett about that confidence specifically after the game. Here's what he had to say.
We're very confident right now. We got some good wins under our belt. Just winning in general, building momentum for game by game, just not overlooking anyone, and just knowing that we have to treat everyone the same.
You guys are a young team, but you guys have been so good at closing out games. Why? How are you guys been able to play so well down the stretch?
Honestly, we kind of do some game situation stuff at practice. We've been honestly working on our free throws a lot because a lot of the game time when the games are close, the free throws are big for us. So we just do a lot of stuff with free throws at the end of practice and just more fatigue to get ready for games.
You also asked Travis DeCure, Coulter, about closing out games in general and specifically Idaho on Saturday.
going into the game, I think all their losses a total of 9 points. And each of those games you can watch down the stretch, about 2-minute mark, they're in. And some of them they've had leads. And so, young and experienced, they've got some older guys that transfers and whatnot, but they're young to the league, to the level. And I just think experience has kind of bit them a little bit. And, at some point I think we'll figure out how to start winning these games, and we got to make sure we play better next time.
Golter, set this up for people, too, because Derek Carter-Hollinger had a huge defensive – in fact, there was a huge series where Saeed Pridgett got a steal, was fouled on a layup, went to the line, made the first one, missed the second one, but Carter-Hollinger got the offensive rebound, put it back up, but he also had a big block on a defensive play that really helped seal this up for the Grizzlies.
It's funny because I asked Saeed Pridgett about them closing out games. They have been good closing out games. They were actually really bad at closing out this game, except for then they responded every time. Timmy Falls, Saeed Pridgett, and maybe Saeed twice, actually. They committed 3 turnovers in the last 2.5 minutes of the game. They were all not good turnovers. But then they got subsequent stops on the other end. Derek Carter-Hollinger, there was a play where there was a series where Josh Vasquez picked Trayvon Allen's pocket clean. Trayvon Allen chased him down on the other end, blocked the shot, but then come down on this end, Trayvon Allen takes a pull-up jumper. Derek Carter-Hollinger gets a grown man rebound, skies up and goes up against 3 dudes and gets the rebound off the missed shot, and then Montana converts. That was kind of the back and forth of this whole game. But the specific sequence here is less than a minute to go, and Carter-Hollinger had a huge block that after a Saeed Pridgett turnover that really sparked Montana and didn't let Idaho close that gap. And then it led to the very, to me, penultimate, or I guess the final most important possession of the game. Montana had the ball, and they were up 2, and every single guy on the team touched the ball at least once, and a couple of them touched it twice. And they wound the shot clock all the way down, and then one extra pass to Jared Samuelson flashing in the lane. He hit a little 6 to 8 foot jumper, and that pressed the lead to 4, and it basically sealed the action. And I just thought it was just indicative of the way that this Montana team is playing as a team. But Derek Carter-Hollinger, a lot of times it's not just about the points. He has had a couple games where he's been in the teens, and even that game against Eastern Washington, he's in the 20s. But the kid's an outstanding shot blocker. He's got the best shot blocking instincts of any young guy I've seen in quite some time. He's an outstanding rebounder. And they are giving him a role that he can handle. Basically, his role when he's in the game is just go get the ball.
Yeah.
And he's doing a great job of doing exactly that.
That's what he said about that block.
Huge. And when I checked him back in, he knew his job was to go get the ball, whether that's a block shot or a rebound, which he did both. Kyle goes there and knocks down free throws down the stretch. And I think we've got some guys that are assuming roles, maybe not the most clarifying roles, but they're assuming roles, and that's what's making us a good team right now.
So and when I said he, sorry, I should have clarified. Travis, the Cure, head coach, what he said about Derek Carter-Hollinger, and his role, and also that particular play. Now the Grizzlies, they moved to 6-1, in a league where there's not really many surprises in terms of results. Still a somewhat unexpected one, and that is Northern Colorado losing to Northern Arizona.
That's right. Northern Arizona swept this last weekend, so wins over Southern Utah and Northern Colorado, which are both 4-win Big Sky teams, so those are good wins by NAU. Get Bernie Andre back big for NAU.
So Northern Colorado was they're the only team that's beaten Montana this season, and they were in second place by themselves with just one loss, 4-1, half game behind the Grizzlies. With that loss, though, Montana's win, they're now 4-2, and Montana is a game and a half ahead. They played one more game now because they had that early scheduling run where they played 4-8. But they are now 6-1, and there are 3 teams tied at 4-2 in second place. The Montana State Bobcats, they fell at home to Eastern Washington, 71-58, the final of that game. Montana State was in good shape in this game for the first 3 quarters of it or so, Coulter, but Eastern Washington put on a blast and really separated this thing out down the stretch.
Talking about not playing well and closing out games. Montana State, they pulled out all the stops. They went with a 1-3-1 zone, which is the first time they've done that for an extended period of time under Dave Sprinkle, and they played great defense. And Eastern Washington, we know they're scoring exploits. We know that their numbers are a little bit inflated from having, ran it up the score on a couple non-Division I schools. But make no mistake, they got as many threats as anybody in the league. They got the best post in the league in Mason Peatling. They got one of the best slasher wingmen in the league in Kim Aiken. They got a couple great shooters, including Jacob Davison, who scored 26 points in this game. They got spot-up guys like Jack Perry, and they got a guy named Ellis Magnuson, who's a true freshman, who's really doing a great job distributing. They got a lot of weapons. Montana State had this game. They were playing their style. I shouldn't say their style because they haven't really defined themselves as that, but they were dictating the tempo of this game. Eastern Washington was frustrated. Kim Aiken was really struggling, and the Cats were doing a good job hanging in there. But they turned the ball over 6 times in the last 4 minutes, and the gap just extended. And then it became just a horrendous game to watch because they spent the last 2.5 minutes fouling to try to keep in it.
Right.
And it was just ugly. Danny Sprinkle, I mean, he said just as much, we didn't deserve to win this game.
That's what he said after the game.
I thought our offense killed us, because I think we had the lead. I think we were up 40-36, and with about 15 minutes left, and I think we scored 5 or 6 points over the next 10 minutes. They scored 23. We had 6 turnovers, and I don't even know if they turned the ball over in that span. And we had opportunities. We got some stops where we could have pushed it to 6, 8, 9 points, and we had, some costly turnovers on the break. And we just got sloppy with it, and they made us pay. And they do what a good veteran team does. And, that's a lethal offensive team. And really, until we started fouling, we had them, around the 60-point mark with about, 5 minutes to go. And our guys, I thought our 1-3-1, it helped us. It kept us in the game. And it kind of sparked our energy a little bit. But, at the end of the day, you got to be able to guard, mano a mano. And, and they were too much for us. Their pace and, they just got good basketball players. Every single guy they got can dribble, pass, shoot, and they know where to get the ball. They're really well coached, and they're smart, good basketball players.
Jacob Davison led the way for Eastern Washington, 26 points, went 4 of 13, got 13 three-pointers in this basketball game. Harold Frey, though, his line often you can look at that and kind of see what happened, for Montana State, good, bad, or otherwise. He ended up with 19 points, which is fine, but it was on 6 of 18 shooting, so just 33% from the field and 2 of 7 from beyond the arc. He had 5 assists, but he also had 5 turnovers. And so to be even basically in your assist-to-turnover ratio for Harold Frey and be at a 33% clip from the field is just not good news for Montana State if that's the line for him. And it was. And that ends up being in a loss. And Coulter, from Montana State, I'm wondering what you think about the Bobcats here just in a quick 30 seconds because, there was so much optimism about the way they were playing and this group and the flow that they've had together and the role players and so forth coming into this conference schedule. And even as conference play began, they were 2-0 and kind of got rolling. But they've taken a couple of losses and they lose 2 in a row now at home, especially with a week off in between. And they're 3-4, which is, again, in this conference, everybody's just bunched up in the middle anyway. But Montana State right now is probably going through the toughest stretch of their season at this very moment. And what do they need to do to kind of come out of this thing and start getting some W's put together?
Well, it's just like in the NBA, there is a 20 to 25 point per game scorer on even the absolute worst team in the league because of the amount of buckets that you're going to get. Montana State's just got to be more efficient. I mean, like you see, look at the scoring lines. Harold Frey, 19 points. Okay, it's good. Amin Adamu, 16 points and 11 rebounds. Good. But those 2 guys combined to go 13 of 35 from the floor.
Right.
2 of 9 from 3.
He's just not nearly efficient enough to make those numbers as impactful as they could have, they would otherwise have been.
Here's kind of what the Cats are going through right now. Everybody knows that everything goes through Harold Frey. So everybody in the league is going to be really, really physical with him. They're going to trap the ball screen. They're going to body him when he's coming off that high pick and roll. And anytime he doesn't have the ball, every time he's running off screens, hit him, knock him down. Don't let him shoot threes. Make it even if he's going to get his points. Make him get him at the free throw line. I think everybody's kind of figured out that Amin Adamu he creates his own shot. He's really athletic, but it doesn't necessarily mean he takes that many good shots. He can make bad shots, but he doesn't take a lot of good shots. Right. And so I think everybody's realizing, all right, let's just guard this guy one-on-one, make him work for it. But he's 16 points on 16 shots. You'll take that all day as a defensive player. And when those 2 guys are taking 34, 35 out of your 57 field goal attempts, that means you're not getting the ball to Jabril Bello. But even if you do, 3 guys are not going to beat you. What Montana State needs to do is they need to have other guys become some sort of a factor. And Layden Ricketts needs to be like a 9 points per game guy, not a 3 points per game guy.
Right.
Other guys they can't just be irrelevant. Borja Fernandez, the true freshman from Spain, he was 0 in this game. He had 0 points. He doesn't need to average even double figures. He just needs to get a couple buckets. He needs to be a threat when he is on the floor, because if you're just letting certain guys score because no one else is going to score at all, I think it's just a tenuous situation to be in, especially when your 2 guys are undersized guards that are trying to make it happen as volume scorers. So, to me, Montana State, they need to do a better job taking care of the ball. You were mentioning Idaho 17 turnovers. Montana State had 19 turnovers. They've been in games because they've been first or second in the league in turnovers per game. 19 turnovers for them, including 11 combined for your starting backcourt. That ain't going to get it done. You're losing every time. But as far as what you do going forward, they just lost to who's considered one of the better teams in the league.
For sure.
So they just need to continue to fight. And when, the game that they won at Idaho, after I saw Idaho live and in person, Montana State and Idaho are not that different. They both have premier guards, and that win is going to resonate. So Montana State just needs to continue to fight and take care of the ball.
It goes Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. On the other side, Montana, their 1,000th win at home. What kind of company does that put the Grizzlies at Dahlberg Arena in with? Well, it's pretty impressive. We'll get to that right after this. Hey, at the Silver Slipper, it's all about great food, tasty beverages, and there to have a good time. Whether you're looking for an affordable family meal or a late-night game of poker, the Silver Slipper has what you are looking for. Right now, Silver Slipper is your football headquarters. We know what's coming up, right? Biggest game in the earth, couple of weeks. 56 televisions to watch sports on, drink specials every day, full liquor store, and Tarantino's Pizzeria, as well as the friendliest staff in town. Visit silverslipperlounge.com for more info. Stop by today. See why the Silver Slipper is one of Montana's best-kept secrets across the street from Super Walmart on Brooks. In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
Colter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started, all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
You hear the term small business all the time, but what does it mean? The answer is, it depends. Whether you're a one-woman show or employ over 100 people, at Farmers State Bank, your business is never small to us. Find the tools for success at any Farmers State Bank location or check us out online at farmersebank.com. Farmers State Bank, helping businesses succeed since 1907. Member FDIC.
Hey guys, Ryan Tootell and Colton Nuanez from Tootell and Nuanez. Hey, we're not just here for your entertainment, we're also a bastion of knowledge and information as well.
If you want to know what's going on in the world of youth sports, from sign-ups to camps and other activities, tune into Tootell and Nuanez on Tuesday.
That's right, interviews and information with people who know to make sure that your kids get all the best in sports that Missoula has to offer this Tuesday on Tootell and Nuanez.
The youth sports segment is brought to you by Pepsi Cola of Missoula, proudly supporting youth athletics in the Garden City.
This is Tucker Sargent, head coach of the University of Montana lacrosse team, and I want to share the game of lacrosse with everyone. Now is the time to get your son or daughter registered for lacrosse with the Missoula Lacrosse Club for the spring season. Missoula Lacrosse Club is for boys and girls ages kindergarten through 8th grade, and no experience is necessary to join. Lacrosse is fun, fast-paced, and available to anyone who wants to play. Early registration discount ends January 31st, so go to MissoulaLacrosse.org to register and learn more.
Join the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula and your community to save the oldest known Willamette steam engine in the nation. Why is Missoula's engine number 7 unique? The engine spent its life in our mountains and valleys, never traveling more than 80 miles from Missoula. It is one of only 2 surviving locomotives from Anaconda Lumber Co. and the only one in Montana. It's a Hollywood movie star, as it played a leading role in the 1954 film Timberjack. Support history and save the train. Learn more and donate at fortmissoulamuseum.org.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tootell, Colter Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. The San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs surged to the championship Sunday, punching their respective tickets to the Super Bowl with dominant wins. And Glendive native Mike Person will become the 9th native Montanan to play in the sport's biggest game.
Person is an offensive guard for the 49ers, helped blast hole after hole for a San Francisco rushing attack. A total of 285 yards and averaged nearly 7 yards per carry on the way to a 37-20 win over Green Bay. Raheem Mostert rushed for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns, including 3 TDs in the first half as the Niners raced to a 27-0 lead at the break.
Person will be the 9th native Montanan and the 6th Montana State alum to play in the Super Bowl. San Francisco is in the Super Bowl for the first time since 2012 and the 7th time in franchise history.
Patrick Mahomes threw 3 touchdowns, and Teron Matthew spearheaded a defensive effort that helped Kansas City stuff the run of the Tennessee Titans on the way to a 35-24 victory at Arrowhead Stadium. Kansas City advances to the Super Bowl for the first time since Super Bowl IV in 1969.
And finally, Montana and Montana State split with Eastern Washington and Idaho in basketball. The Grizz men moved to 6-1 in the Big Sky with a 67-63 win. The Lady Grizz lost 52-51 in Moscow. The Montana State men, they lost 71-58 to the MSU women, 89-85 winners in double OT.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
In Dahlberg Arena Saturday. Pretty good. Lands up with some pretty impressive companies. Tootell Nuanez, 109 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Hello. Good to be with you on this Monday evening. Thanks for being with us. Find us on Instagram at 1029ESPN. Find us on Twitter at 1029ESPN. Giveaways, great picks, information will help you with your life. Okay? Colter, we've been continuing this Grizz Greats Coaching Tree podcast series highlighting the head coaches from the University of Montana men's basketball team. By the way, tomorrow, Mike Montgomery. Maybe, I don't know if you're ranking these guys, but certainly of the coaches that we were able to speak to, which was all of the living coaches, what his career has spanned, both in terms of time and the levels at which he has coached, maybe the most impressive of all, and also, frankly, very, very directly responsible for the coaching tree in having Montana guys who he's continued to have on his staffs, both at Stanford, at Cal, including Travis DeCure, while they were there. So there's an awesome one for you tomorrow. We're looking forward to it. But within the scope of that, Colter, the Grizzlies on Saturday, the 1,000th win in Dahlberg Arena. Of teams who have been playing in their current home venue, okay? This is not about, we know that teams have built new barns and stuff like that and long histories and all that. But of the teams that are still playing in the same stadiums that have housed their wins for an exceptionally long period of time over the last 60 years, Kansas, Duke, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and Wichita State are the only teams who have a higher winning percentage at home than the Montana Grizzlies. I mean, that's unbelievable, man. The Jayhawks, the Blue Devils, Oklahoma State, Vanderbilt sort of a surprise in there, actually, to me, like almost a bit of an outlier. And then the exceptional Wichita State, whose home court advantage rivals anyone, anywhere in the country. And we know how good Wichita State has been. I think a couple Final Fours in their recent history as well. But that's remarkable. I mean, in the last 60 years, to be sixth, basically, in your home winning percentage, and to cross that 1,000 home wins is pretty impressive. You asked Travis DeCure about that very thing after the game on Saturday. Here's what he had to say.
There's always an opportunity, right? And to be a part of a place that's especially the University of Montana. Pretty much every time you touch the floor, you got an opportunity to play for something and reach maybe an accolade that the whole program has been a part of more so than just us on the floor. So it's always good.
Yeah, I mean, again, Travis DeCuire, I think, he's a historian of the game and a historian of the University of Montana, and it matters to him the lineage that is there at the University of Montana, and that benchmark, I think, is just another one that you cross, and it gives an opportunity kind of for reflection and perspective.
Dahlberg Arena, which was originally just called the Fieldhouse, opened in 1953. The very first game ever at Dahlberg Arena was a game that I can't believe this is actually a real stat. Number 1 Indiana, the reigning national champions, came to Missoula
to open the Fieldhouse. They came from the other Fieldhouse.
Assembly Hall, certainly. And they beat the Grizzlies 74-54. But fittingly, Montana's first win ever at Dahlberg Arena was against a nationally ranked Idaho team. 17th in the country, the Vandals were then. And the Grizz won that game 60-57.
Wow.
And then they get their 1,000th home win some nearly 60 years, or I guess nearly 70 years later.
That'd be about 67 years.
Against Idaho. Their win percentage at Dahlberg Arena specifically, this is their 1,000th home win, so they're 1,409 ever on their home court. That's 710 win percentage. But in Dahlberg Arena, they're winning almost 75% of their games. They've won 720 games against 248 losses. So that's where that stat comes from in terms of being up there with Kansas, Oklahoma State, Vanderbilt, Wichita State. There's 32 schools, period, that have as high a win percentage as 744 or higher all-time at home. So, I mean, there's just been a ton of rich history. And you were asking the other day, why do they call it the Adams Center? The Adams Center is actually named for famed athletic director Harry Adams, who was track and field coach, assistant football coach, and a three-sport athlete. And they named it after him in 1953. And then in 1979, the court named for George Jiggs Dahlberg, who was Montana's basketball coach from 1937 to 42 and then 45 to 55. And he's still the all-time winningest coach in UM history. So there's been a lot of history that's taken place at Dahlberg Arena. The part that's crazy, Nick Halsey, Montana Sports Information, he put out a slideshow of pictures of over the years. Montana still draws well, and there was a season-high crowd there on Saturday. I think 4,279 was the attendance. Last year, down the stretch, they were getting 5,500 plus. Good crowds. And when the Cats are in town, it sells out. The capacity is 7,322. But before the remodel, that place used to hold almost 10,000 people. And so when doing this Grizz Grades podcast, going through all the old box scores, when it's big games, it's Idaho, Idaho State, Weaver State, you get 8,500 fans. I mean, every attendance so packed in.
Yeah, it was wider,
massively. Right? I mean, there was just so many people there. And, I think that's one of the things that really stands out about this Grizz Grades podcast. It's just those guys remembering what it was like playing at the zoo.
Yeah. And they almost all cited the fact that the student section was at, half court along the sideline rather than behind the deal. And I think there's, an open conversation about the positives and negatives of that change. But certainly from an environment standpoint within there, to have the kids along the side, is a big deal because, they got the energy, all right? The 20-somethings, man, they're the ones that are going to come in with all the hooting and hollering to get that thing fired up. So, it's an interesting, deal. I understand, why you do it, but it was the zoo was a real thing, back in the day, and it's at times it still is, but not as consistent like as it once was. And I know it's something that Travis DeCuire has worked diligently towards, to sort of reestablishing attendance and not just numbers, but environment, the way it is. And I mean, if you follow Travis DeCuire on Twitter, okay, which you should, you got free tickets to a lot of games. I mean, he is buying tickets or providing tickets, however he's doing it on social medias regularly, and I really applaud him for that. I mean, he is doing everything in his power and has since he's been at the University of Montana to get people to go to the games, to get people into the arena. And I think that's a good thing, man. And it again, we've talked about this a lot of times, but the concerts, sporting events, the fans make it what it is. Right. You know, it's that's the experience of it, and the more there are that are engaged in what's going on, the better it's going to be, regardless of what the game actually is, you know, on the floor. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Colton, we got to talk about Trace Tinkle, which we'll do after this break. 22 points over the weekend. He crosses the 2,000-point barrier for his career. He is the 16th member in the history of the Pac-12, now Pac-12, to have 2,000 points over his career. So we'll talk about the Missoula native, Hellgate High School alum, playing for the Oregon State Beavers right after this. Hey, this Saturday, the 25th, at Lost Trail, Powder Mountain, it is the Smash Life Banked Slalom. What is that? Well, it's the 9th annual. It's a banked slalom race, okay? It's a very cool form of racing, and it is in celebration and commemoration of Aaron Robinson and Dylan Candelaria, who were both past doing the sports that they love. It's also a celebration of snowboarding and the friendships that have been made because of them. But you could go there, be a part of this thing. It serves as a fundraiser for the A-Rob Plant a Seed Project, which is run by Aaron's mother, Pam, to give kids the opportunity to go outside and snowboard at Aaron's home mountain in Whitefish. And if you win the Smash Like Bank Slalom, you get the golden ticket. You're automatically into the legendary Mount Baker Banked Slalom race. So that is very cool. Helmets required for the race. But go down there and check it out. There's also demo days this weekend at Lost Trail Powder Mountain. Text the word powder to 31996. Again, 31996. Text powder and get powder alerts, updates, and you will also be entered to win a 5-day punch pass for this season. Get 5 free days of riding at Lost Trail. The best snow around, Lost Trail Powder Mountain.
Now, at the Montana Club, our goal is to create a menu of mouth-watering food with variety to satisfy any craving. From the garden-fresh ingredients in our salads to our succulent, perfectly grilled Montana Club Angus steaks, we take pride in every detail that goes into preparing your food. Top off your meal with a premium cocktail, wine, or microbrew. Come as you are and satisfy your craving with our home-style breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes and shocks and wheels and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night, because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Hey guys, it's Ryan and Coulter from Tootell and Nuanez here to tell you about our brand new project that we are so excited to release, Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree, the podcast series with all of the living coaches in the history of the University of Montana men's basketball team.
From the legendary godfather of the coaching tree, Judd Heathcote, a string of some of the most successful coaches in college basketball had their careers start at the University of Montana.
It really is a remarkable group when you sit back and think about it and what all of these guys have accomplished throughout their career. careers in the game. And Coulter, I'm excited because Wednesday, our first one comes out, Jim Brandenburg.
Brandenburg was only the head coach at Montana for 2 years, but he was certainly the bridge from Judd Heathcote to Mike Montgomery, and that set the stage for the rest of this tremendous coaching tree. We'll be excited each week throughout the winter and spring to roll out Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast.
Just search Grizz Greats wherever you get your podcasts and listen all season long. Grizz Greats, a Coaching Tree podcast, is brought to you by Blackfoot Communications.
If it matters to Missoula, it matters to us. Ryan Tootell and Coulter Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
Hey, darling, sleeping on the blacktop. Hey, darling, running through the trees, honey. Hey, darling, leaving for the next time. Lesson my sense catches up with me. Corn liquor tastes sweeter in this town. Could it be it's the same as
Trace Tinkle, a 2,000-point score at Oregon State. Very impressive. The 16th member of the Pac-12 to cross the 2,000-point threshold. And a Missoula native playing for a former Grizz coach and also, notably enough, his father, Trace and Wayne. And in Oregon State getting it done. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Great to be with you on this very, very fine Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for being here. Coulter, 22 points at Washington State. Also, by the way, the same game that the Cougars required Klay Thompson's jersey. So Klay Thompson in the house. Huh?
Did you say required?
No, retired.
Okay,
they retired KT's jersey.
You said required.
That's what I heard, too.
So,
I thought you were making
retired his number.
I thought you were making a joke about them requiring him to be there. If you follow local Twitter accounts, I think Klay Thompson was more than happy to be back in Poland. He was loving it.
Oh, loving it. And in the house for this thing, it's bad for David, man. He's already got to correct us enough when we get actual proper names wrong. When we're not saying just English words correctly, we got problems. Yes, retired his jersey. Anyhow, 22 points for Trace Tinkle puts him at 2016 points for his career. Again, the 16th player in Pac-12 history to do it. He's 19 points but behind Steve Johnson from tying the second for the all-time scoring at Oregon State. Gary Payton, currently the all-time leader for Oregon State, 2172. So he's definitely got to look at it. I mean, he's only 160 points, not even, behind Gary Payton, and you got another 10, 12 games, and then, hopefully a postseason of some sort, not to mention the Pac-12 tournament, however far you go. So there's a real chance that he's averaging basically 20 points a game. You would expect him actually to become the all-time leading scorer at Oregon State when it's all said and done. Very, very impressive. It's sort of interesting, Coulter, because when you project Trace Tinkle out to the NBA, he thought about going to the into the draft last year, and I think he projected as a late first, early second type of guy. And he's been so good in college, and I mean is got Pac-12 Player of the Year type of season that he's having, and yet, as we know, being great at the college level, regardless of sport, doesn't always translate to the NBA. He's certainly going to get a look. He's certainly going to get a shot in the NBA. I'm wondering what you think about the skill set that he brings, because sometimes I think it's so hard, man. Sometimes you see guys and you're like, oh, man, that dude's going to be really good in the NBA. And then, no. And other guys, you go, I just don't know if he's going to get it done. All of a sudden, the next thing he shows up and he's just slaying. So I'm not saying that, washing out or being great are the only two, options. Maybe you're an outstanding six-man. I don't know what the deal is, but this is a kid, from the city of Missoula, played high school, Hellgate High School, and is now absolutely going to be drafted, presumably in the NBA draft. Who knows what kind of opportunity is out there in front of him, but an unbelievable career for a kid that, you go, okay, wow, he's this type of player. He's an all-time Pac-12 conference type of basketball player.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, 13 guaranteed games left for Oregon State. including the first round of the Pac-12 tournament, so 12 in the regular season, and then one guaranteed tournament game. So Trace Tinkle needs 156 points to tie Gary Payton, so he'd have to average 12 points per game on the dot. So it's likely that Trace Tinkle will become the all-time leading scorer in the history of Oregon State basketball. That's pretty cool. The fact is that Trace Tinkle, he got his second year at Oregon State, he played 6 games and then broke his wrist, and he ended up getting a hardship. So he gets 121 points there, which helps in the pursuit of this record, certainly.
It's interesting, though, because as a freshman, he really didn't break into the starting rotation until the second half of the year. I mean, I think that Wayne, in his, early on in his coaching career at Oregon State, didn't want to have people questioning, well, why is your son playing, and clearly when he was on the floor, he proved that the team needed him to be out there. I mean, he was one of their best players from very early on, but he got those, like you said, you call them extra games or whatever with the injury, but he also probably was sitting in some games that he would have been playing in on the other side of that. So did Gary Payton play 40 years of college basketball?
So. Yes.
Okay. David says yes. Dave, we got to figure out when you're on the air. We got to have like a red light or something that shows that this is going out on the radio. I never know if you're speaking on the radio or just into my headset. I do know when you're not speaking at all. This would be one of those moments.
As far as what I think of Trace Tinkle's NBA prospects, I think that, what do I always say about the NBA? More than anything in the NBA, you got to have two things. You got to be an NBA caliber athlete almost across the board. There's very few people. I mean,
there's a couple.
Jokic from the Nuggets is like the one anomaly, but he's 7 feet tall, so he has elite size. But or you have to have an elite skill. Trace Tinkle is really good at a lot of things, but I don't know if he does anything elite at an NBA level. If he can become an elite shooter, I think he can have a long NBA career.
Yeah,
I think he's just maybe a couple notches short of that. I do think
me of Chandler Parsons.
I do think that Davis and Chandler Parsons. That's actually a decent comp. I think that Trace Tinkle is significantly more mentally stable than Chandler Parsons. So I think that gives him an advantage. But I do think that there's certain things that goes into this as far as being able to navigate, because when basketball or when a sport becomes your job, how do you embrace that opportunity? How much better do you get? The fact that Wayne played professional basketball for more than a decade overseas, there's more of a path. I mean, Trace knows what the structure is like. He's going to have a lot of people that can give him a lot of good advice. That helps. He could become like a Chandler Parsons, Ryan Anderson type guy if he could become an elite shooter. But I just think that's the next step.
Yeah.
And also, what sort of production can he? Because he's been a very focal point of Oregon State since that second half of his freshman year, where he's got the ball in his hands quite a bit. He's got the green light quite a bit. How does he react to? Because in the NBA, he's going to have to be like a reserve bench type guy initially.
But for being a 6'8", 6'9" type of kid, he handles the ball really well. Okay, 6'7", really good ball handler and really good passer of the basketball. And I think those are two things that at that size, that even in this new heading to the NBA, a lot of college kids are not great at. I think that's something that gets developed, and so that is something where maybe he's ahead of the curve. Again, is he NBA elite in either of those? Maybe not. But he, I think, is ahead of where some of his peers might be in terms of when you talk about the size and especially the amount that he's handled the ball, because he has been, a de facto point guard at times for this Oregon State team. So fun to track that, but congratulations certainly to him and to Wayne Tinkle. I mean, it's to both of them their credit how successful he has been over the course of his career, and this will be fun too. I'm glad he stayed, man. It's cool that he's thought about going to the NBA. You want to pursue the dream, but it's cool to finish this thing off, get one more year, kind of do the father-son deal, but also you start to pass some of these pretty impressive benchmarks and become an all-timer at a place, which very few people can say that they've done. Hour one of the books, hour two straight ahead. I don't want to, but we have to talk about championship weekend, what happened in the NFL, and how Kansas City and San Francisco found themselves the last two teams standing heading into Super Bowl 54. We'll get to that right after this. Hey, at the Silver Slipper, it's all about great food, tasty beverages, and urge to have a good time. Whether you're looking for an affordable family meal or a late-night game of poker, the Silver Slipper has what you're looking for. Right now, Silver Slipper is your football headquarters. You got one game left. Got to get ready for it, though. You got a couple weeks here. 56 TVs to watch sports on. Drink specials every day. Full liquor store, Tarantino's Pizzeria. The Silver Slipper has all you need to watch all of your favorite games and the friendliest staff in town. Visit thesilverslipperlounge.com for more info. Stop by today to see why the Silver Slipper is one of Montana's best-kept secrets across the street from Super Walmart on Brooks.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up.
Need a quick bite to eat? Town Pump Big Bread Sandwiches in the deli are only $5.99. While you're there, you might as well pick up a 24-pack of Pabst or Rainier for only $18.99. Town Pump, right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, yeah.
Hey guys, Ryan Tootell and Colton Nuanez from Tootell and Nuanez. Hey, we're not just here for your entertainment, we're also a bastion of knowledge and information as well.
If you want to know what's going on in the world of youth sports, from signups to camps and other activities, tune into Tootell and Nuanez on Tuesday.
That's right, interviews and information with people who know to make sure that your kids get all the best in sports that Missoula has to offer this Tuesday on Tootell and Nuanez.
The youth sports segment is brought to you by Pepsi Cola of Missoula, proudly supporting youth athletics in the Garden City. Hey guys, you ever heard of Magic Johnson?
Rings a bell.
One of the greatest basketball superstars of all time played for a man named Judd Heathcote at Michigan State. And guess what? Judd Heathcote started his career at the University of Montana.
Coulter, did you know that 2 former University of Montana head coaches have been head coaches in the NBA and 1 on Team USA?
Isn't that amazing?
And that's why we've created Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast. Get it wherever you get your podcast. Just search Grizz Greats.
It's a phenomenal and historic podcast series proudly presented by Blackfoot Communications and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
Missoula Electric Co-op offers eligible students the opportunity to compete for one of 14 $1,000 scholarships. 2 scholarship recipients will be awarded to each district within MEC's service area. All active members of Missoula Electric Cooperative or qualifying dependents may apply for a scholarship. Visit MissoulaElectric.com for more information on how to apply. All scholarship applications must be received by 5 p.m. on Monday, January 27th. If you have questions, please contact Vicky at 541-6320.
Arts Missoula is seeking nominations for the 21st Annual Missoula Arts and Culture Awards. Individuals or groups may be nominated for awards in 5 categories: Cultural Ambassador, Individual Artist, Arts Educator, Business Support for the Arts, and Cultural Vision. Award winners will be honored at Arts Missoula's Annual Awards Luncheon at the Doubletree Hotel on Tuesday, April 7th. Nominations will be accepted through Wednesday, February 12th. To nominate or to purchase tickets for the 21st Annual Missoula Arts and Culture Awards, go to artsmissoula.org.
Have you been hurt or disabled? Are you missing time from work and not sure what to do? I'm attorney Chris Helmer, and Clark Fork Law Offices in Missoula is here to help. Our team specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. We fight for the benefits you deserve. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez, ESPN Sports Center. The San Francisco 49ers and Kansas City Chiefs surged to the championship Sunday, punching their respective tickets to the Super Bowl with dominant wins. And Glendive native Mike Person, who will become the 9th native Montanan to play in the sport's biggest game.
Person is an offensive guard for the 49ers, and he helped last hole after hole as San Francisco rushed for 285 yards and averaged nearly 7 yards per carry, all the way to a 37-20 win over the Green Bay Packers. Raheem Mostert rushed for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns, including 3 in the first half, as the Niners raced to a 27-0 lead in the break.
person will be the 9th native Montana and 6th Montana State alum to play in the Super Bowl. San Francisco is into the Super Bowl for the first time since 2012 and the 7th time in their franchise's history.
Patrick Mahomes threw 3 touchdowns. Teron Matthew spearheaded a defensive effort to help the Kansas City Chiefs stuff the run game against the Tennessee Titans. On the way to a 35-24 victory, Kansas City advances to the Super Bowl for the first time since Super Bowl IV, 1969.
And finally, Montana State split with Eastern Washington and Idaho in basketball. The Grizz men moved to 6-1 in Big Sky play with a 67-63 win over Idaho and Missoula. The Lady Grizz lost 52-51 in Moscow. The MSU men fell 71-58 to Eastern Washington in Bozeman, while the MSU women won 89-85 in double overtime.
ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Ford Law.
3 nights at the motel under street lights in the city of palms. Call me what you want when you want if you want, and you can call me names if you call me up. 3 nights at the motel under street lights in the city of palms. Call me what you want when you want if you want, and you can call me names if you call me up.
Now from the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tootell and Coulter Nuanez.
Well, happy hour number 2 to you, and happy Monday. Work day. If you're on a regular work day, which honestly, who is? Some of us. It's come to a close. Well done. You got through another one. Good for you. Thanks for letting us roll with you back to your house or maybe out to dinner, whatever it is you're up to tonight. We appreciate you letting us be with you, Tootell and Nuanez. We are broadcasting live on ESPN Radio and SWX Montana Television. If you missed anything in the first hour, check it out on the podcast. The Tootell and Nuanez podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. Search it, download it, rate it, review it, subscribe, all that. We appreciate all that. Tootell and Nuanez podcast brought to us by the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel and Blackfoot Communications. If you want to call, 329-1899, the phone number. All guests join us via the Rankage Brothers RV phone line. And if you would like to listen live, you go to the website, 1029ESPN.com. The stream is there, and it is available thanks to Opportunity Bank. Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. Coulter, Chiefs, Niners, Super Bowl 54. That's the matchup. The Kansas City Chiefs beat Tennessee 35-24. Wasn't that close. San Francisco 49ers beat the Green Bay Packers 37-20. Wasn't even close to that close. And it is going to be a fun matchup to talk about for the next couple of weeks leading up to the Super Bowl. The number one offense, the number one defense, the couple of young quarterbacks, and obviously the probably MVP of the league in Patrick Mahomes, the potential of a first ever one for Andy Reid, and obviously the first shot at this thing for a, outstanding young coach in Kyle Shanahan. We could talk about all that stuff, and we certainly will, but let's review the games because, frankly, championship weekend is great, and it's great fun, and the atmosphere and the environments. And with the 2 home teams winning, that certainly adds to the flavor of it. But these were bad football games, man. These were blowouts. Basically, the Chiefs, their final sort of dagger in this thing was that touchdown pass from Mahomes to Watkins, kind of on a run, like always, just 50 yards, winging it out there, no big deal. With about, 8, maybe 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, something like that happened. And it was 35-17 at that point. Done deal. Like, Tennessee's not scoring 3 touchdowns or 3 times in the final 7-8 minutes of a football game, especially the way they play. They ended up scoring once. Okay, that's about right. But they fall by 11. And the San Francisco 49ers did whatever they want all day long. Listen, Raheem Mostert was obviously missed by a lot of teams. I think he was cut by 7 different teams before he finally landed in San Francisco. He had 0 rushing yards prior to his career in San Francisco. He's really good. The Green Bay Packers made him look like a first-ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, 220 yards rushing, averaged like 8 yards a carry.
7.6, yep.
Excuse me, 280 yards, 85 yards as a team on the ground, 4 touchdowns for Mostert, an embarrassment for the Green Bay Packers defensively. The side of the ball that I thought had maybe been, and they had been up to this point, the most improved. They had been a team that had played really well in a lot of ways, but they got done to them exactly what was done the first time. In San Francisco, would never lose to the Green Bay Packers. Never. If they kept playing this game for eternity with these players on this field, San Francisco will never lose. And by the way, tip of the cap to Mike Person, who is on the offensive line that got this thing done, because this was when a guy like Raheem Mostert does what he does. Look, good for you. You had a great day. This was all about hole after hole after hole, and there is nobody home for the Green Bay Packers. And they got outcoached, and they got outplayed. And when you lose it schematically and you lose it physically, you got no shot. And the San Francisco 49ers deserve everything they got, and the Green Bay Packers do too. A one-way trip back to Wisconsin.
We'll start with the Chiefs game. The Chiefs are so explosive offensively that once they get it rolling, even if they don't come out the gates hot, I mean, they spotted Tennessee a 10-0 lead and then just blitzed them. I mean, they scored, I think, 5 of the next 6 times. And so that in itself is going to give them a chance against anybody. I'm going to be so interested to see how they react. Their home field advantage is so unreal.
Yeah,
and
outstanding.
And Mahomes is just so good when he's playing to that crowd, and you could just see the momentum.
He's pretty good anyway.
No, he's so good, period. But you can just see the momentum they were able to build the last 2 weeks, and as soon as they get it rolling, there's just like this tipping point, and then they just become literally unstoppable. I mean, I've never really, even the great offenses the league has seen, there's very few teams that can score on 4 and 5 consecutive possessions, and Kansas City can, and that is what makes them so dangerous. Mm-hmm. As far as the Niners-Packers game goes, I just don't know what the game plan was if you're the Packers. I mean,
pack it up.
They got they were just flat. I mean, Matt LaFleur was flat out coached.
Completely. Matt LaFleur was exposed as what he is, which is, probably a pretty good look. You're in the NFC Championship game. It's great. He's straight up out-coached by a guy who is at another level from what he's at. And by the way, Mike Pettin, too. I mean, what are we doing, Mike Pettin? You've been around this league a little while. And
totally.
You can't, there is no scenario in which you're making any play defensively. They went 3 and out on the first series, San Francisco did, and you go, wow, okay. And that was it. That's all the tape that San Francisco needed to go, this is how we're going to destroy this team for the next 59 minutes.
San Francisco's offensive line was certainly getting a good push. But to me, the run fits for the Packers just looked off. It's one thing you just never see in the NFL in the playoffs guys getting loose consistently for 9, 11, 12, 13. Yep. When they were running toss, they were running counter, they were running whatever they wanted. And again, it was good play by the offensive line by the Niners, but also there was something wrong with what the Packers were doing.
Yes.
I mean, they were getting out of their lanes.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I hear you. I mean, here's the thing. It's like the zone blocking scheme that the San Francisco 49ers run is very effective, clearly.
And it allows them Mike Shanahan-esque
to run wherever they want. I mean, you talk about using the full 53 yards of width to find gaps and spots to go. But they just had the thing dialed in, and there was just no answer. There's nobody home for Green Bay, and that is, it's disappointing because the other thing that's disappointing is when you put up a goose egg and a half, and I mean, the one really good drive that Green Bay has, the center snaps the ball into his own underpants while Aaron Rodgers is falling backwards with things on the ground. You just turn the thing over at or near the red zone of the opponent on a drive where you desperately got to have it. Then they go down and score. And then Aaron Rodgers throws an interception, which is that's a bad throw by him. He got played on that throw and scored yet another touchdown. Now going into the break, it's 27-0, and it was already over, but it's really over. I mean, it's over at halftime at that point. Great for you scoring 20 points in the second half. That's all well and good. I will say this. There's a lot of people who are on Aaron Rodgers today and going, hey, Green Bay, you're at or near the end of the road with Aaron Rodgers. That's stupid. That is stupid. Aaron Rodgers went, what did he go, 31
of 39.
31 of 39. 326 yards. He had the 2 interceptions. The second one, by the way, was at the end of the game. I mean, which was not all that important. And he was just fine with the exception of the 1 interception that he had. They ran the ball as a team for 62 yards. 62 yards. This is against like the 17th ranked rush defense in football. And by the way, this had nothing to do about the offense. I mean, they needed to score some points in the first half and didn't, so that does have to do with them. But it doesn't matter. If you give up 7 to 8 yards per carry 40 times in a dang football game, that's the only thing you need to know. That's it.
I just couldn't believe they didn't adjust and make Jimmy Garoppolo throw the ball. I mean, he only threw 8 passes.
6 of 8! 6 of 8 in a professional football game.
I mean,
to go to the Super Bowl, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Honestly, I think he only faced 3 third downs of 6 yards or more, and he was 3 of 3. Half of his pass completions came on the only 3 third and longs that they faced.
Why would you ever do anything? 8 is 4 too many in this football game. That's stupid. Just keep giving the ball away. Just keep turning around and handing the thing off.
Well, the thing is, they did. I mean, 2 of the completions, one of them was the long one to Deebo Samuel, and another one was a short one to Deebo Samuel early. And then out of halftime, George Kittle hadn't had a touch, and they threw the one pass to George Kittle for a 19-yard gain.
Yep.
And that was it. Then after that, that's what they did, turn around and hand the ball off. So fascinating that the Niners have employed this 4-back system all year, and then it became a one-man show.
Mm-hmm.
Tevin Coleman dislocated his shoulder, so that gave an opening.
Or elbow, maybe.
Something.
Yeah.
The report is that his right shoulder. That's from ESPN.com. Okay. And Matt Breida only touched the ball once.
Yep.
And that was it. 29 of the 42 carries were by Mostert. So he emerges as the featured guy. And I mean, 220 yards, that's the second highest single game total in the history of the playoffs.
Yeah, here's the thing.
With the most striking part about it is I bet you that I would reckon that 85 to 90% of 200-yard rushing games by a single player in NFL history include a run of 50 yards or more. His longest run was 36 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So that just shows you, I mean, it really was just gash you over and over and over. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was 2nd and 3. Now it's 1st and 10. 2nd and 3, 1st and 10. Just over and over and over again. I couldn't believe it. I don't know what Green Bay is going to do when they watch this film, but again, the Niners deserve a ton of credit, but there was something awry. Like Green Bay had it wrong. They had the whole answer to every answer on the test was wrong.
Completely wrong. Because they have the personnel to be better than this. Look, San Francisco is the number 2 rushing team in the league, and the number 1 team is the Baltimore Ravens, and it's Lamar Jackson. Okay, I mean, that's the thing. If you're talking about a team that's actually straight up handing the ball off and running it, they're the best. So good for them.
Yep.
They doubled their average in this game.
Right.
And that is unacceptable. I mean, there is a bunch of critique to be happening inside that coaching staff, because these are the games you get to and then you lose them, and that you can't lose like that. Can't lose like that, even to this team. I find the AFC Championship game, it's so I mean, it wasn't nearly as dramatic as the divisional round, but to again be down 10-0 and go, okay, well, what's going on here? And now are they just going to start handing the ball off? And I thought, you want to talk about a run defense? How about what Kansas City did against the best running back in football in terms of yardage? Gave 69 yards on the ground, the one score early, but they bottled up Derrick Henry. I understand that Tennessee was down in this game and had to go more pass, and that it developed in the way they didn't want it to, where they needed to try and keep up a little bit. They still rushed the ball 19 times with Derrick Henry for only 69 yards. I mean, 3.5 yards a carry is what he did. You're going to win that football game against Tennessee if you're able to take away their best player in that way. And I didn't think Kansas City could. Like, I didn't think Kansas City was the team that was going to stop Derrick Henry. I mean, you after the New England Patriots and the Baltimore Ravens, and he runs wild. So I give him a ton of credit. Obviously, the pressure that offense then turns and puts on the opposing offense is real. Like, it's real what Mahomes and Watkins and Hill and Kelsey, what that whole group is able to accomplish, forces, I think, the hand of offensive coordinators and head coaches, and I think that they end up not being true to themselves in instances, because they feel this blistering pace and this sort of level of inevitability, like this team's going to score again. I mean, I think it's so telling that two teams were up double digits on the Kansas City Chiefs and still went for it on fourth down. Vrabel went for it on fourth down and got it on a 4th and 2. Last week, Houston, they went for it on a fake punt and didn't get it, and they were up like 20. I think it was 24-7. It might have been 24-14 at that point, but I mean, that was an absolutely, like, you're in the driver's seat and you are going for it on fourth down on your own 30-yard line on a fake punt. I mean, you got no answer defensively for the other team if you're trying to pull that off like Houston was. And I thought some of that was at play with this Tennessee club in this game. Also, though, Tennessee was just overmatched. I mean, they had this really great run. They played really, really well. They got further than anybody thought. I realize that's no probably solace to them. They're professional football players, but Kansas City's the better team. By the way, obviously, so is San Francisco. I mean, the two best teams, they're playing each other in the Super Bowl, and that is good. I'm happy about that.
Couple questions for you.
Yeah.
Number one, is Tennessee real, or was this just a flash in the pan?
I think they're real, but I don't know that means, hey, see you in next year's AFC Championship game.
Right.
This is a really good football team, and I think they're built for the long haul. Derrick Henry's still a young guy. I mean, I know
he'll be old soon.
He will, but he ain't now, and he won't be this forthcoming year, I don't think.
But you never know, man. You're one play away.
Well, okay. But, I mean, you're asking me about what they got, and what they got right now. What they got right now is, and they have a outstanding young wide receiver in Brown.
I'm checking his touches.
And a big-time step up at quarterback, it looks like, in Ryan Tannehill. And sometimes, it's about fit and system. And Ryan Tannehill clearly is, found himself in the right place to be as successful as he can be. Now, is he the long-term answer? I think that's a big question for Tennessee because I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I do think they need to get a little better defensively. I mean, they're good. They're not great defensively.
What do they need?
I mean, they need pass rush.
They need a pass rush.
Yeah, I mean, they really do. And so, that's, I mean, everybody does, but I think that's something that they're lacking. But I think they have great coaching, right? I mean, they look like they got their guy in that capacity. And they obviously have a great running game, very good offensive line. So I think they're a legit team.
I agree. I think they need an edge. I mean, Jeffrey Simmons is a good player, but I mean they're running an odd man front, and they have such good inside guys. I mean, Jeffrey Simmons, Daquan Jones, and Jarrell Casey are all really good. They just need that guy coming off of the edge to really put pressure on. So
what's your other question?
My other question is what same thing. What do the Packers need to do?
Well, they need another legit top end threat in the pass game. It's Devontae Adams and then whoever else is running around. I mean, that's
how good does that guy need to be? Does he need to be like Kendrick Bourne good, or does he need to be like
well, you know what?
Chris Godwin good?
You know what I would love to see? What do the two teams have in common that are going to the Super Bowl? All pro tight ends.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy Aaron Rodgers has never really had one.
I mean, they have tried and tried and tried again to find the guy at that spot, and they haven't. They haven't. They got Jimmy Graham too late, and the other Rodgers was never panned out to be the guy. Mercedes Lewis is there. He's at the end of his. So, I mean, that is the area that I would, I think it would be awesome. I mean, look, George Kittle doesn't grow on trees, okay? We all understand that. It's not like you can just go out and get him. But if they could find somebody along those lines, I think that would be a huge, huge help. And because Aaron Rodgers can still make wide receivers into really good players, The other thing, too, man, and I mean, defensively, I think they're actually personnel-wise decent. They could use another really good linebacker, but they have a pass rush right now. Yeah. They can always bolster it, deepen it, all that kind of stuff, and they have a good young secondary, all things considered. It's not great, but it's good. So I think that's good. But they got to the NFC Championship game. They went 14-3. They also, I mean, this feels a little bit like the FCS, doesn't it? Because the gap between them and the two best teams in this league is enormous. It's enormous right now.
That's because I don't think that the Packers are the third best team.
I'm not saying they are, but they were there.
They were.
I mean, I think the Saints are better than the Packers are.
So the Ravens?
I think the Ravens are better than the Packers are. I think the Packers are probably the 5th or 6th best team in the NFL. And look, if you, again, what do we say? If you're going into league play, we were talking about this in the NBA, but if you think you have a 5% or better chance of going to the Super Bowl, that's pretty good. There's a lot of teams, half the teams in this league, 0 chance of going to the Super Bowl. 0. Okay, so if you have a 5 to 10% chance, to say nothing of a 15%, I mean, that's great, and they have that. But the deficiencies are very clear, and they're a decent running football team. They're not a good enough running football team. They're obviously not a good enough run-stopping football team, although I consider this to be more anomalous than anything else, but it can't happen in the biggest moments. Look, if this happens in the regular season, which it did, by the way, they just didn't learn anything from it or couldn't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Kyle Shanahan is just an alien. Maybe he's just better than everybody else, and nobody's going to get it. But that was disappointing. That was the most disappointing part of it for Packer fans.
What Shanahan does is so simple. That's what's so brilliant about it. They're running all sorts of motions that they've never run before. But the plays that they run behind the motion is the same. It was kind of crazy to see because the pre-snap motions, they've always been sort of a part of the NFL, but not at the prevalence that they've been in the college game the last 10 years. And in the college game, it's so much just about deceiving kids, making kids mess up. That's what you want to do in college. Get them in space, get them one-on-one, miss a tackle, gone. It's so much rarer in the NFL. And so to see a team just have their heads spinning by all the pre-snap motions, it was just honestly wild. I couldn't believe it. But
wasn't it disappointing though, Coulter, that neither of these games was from a football standpoint a really good game?
Yes, it was.
These two games, they did not come down to it.
No, right,
at all.
The reason I asked about the Packers is because when you get to this point, when you are one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the league, you have to make decisions on where are you going to go next. Jimmy Garoppolo had a funny tweet. He said, "My ACL was 100% worth Nick Bosa."
Right.
It's a joke, but it's also so true. Mm-hmm. You get Jimmy Garoppolo tears his ACL, you get a chance to be bad, and then you get a chance to draft that guy. The likelihood of you going and signing somebody like that to bolster an NFL caliber roster is just so rare.
That's right.
And that's why I'm wondering about with the Packers. Like, sure, a tight end or a premier receiver opposite Devontae Adams could help them so much. But do they sacrifice? I mean, their 2 tackles and their center were the highest graded players at their positions in the league. So those 3 guys are the best offensive linemen, according to Pro Football Focus, at their specific positions in the NFL. The Vikings are such a great parallel. The Vikings, the narrative was they need to get a quarterback. They need someone better than Case Keenum. Well, they sacrificed then they tried to not re-sign Anthony Barr. They ended up re-signing him anyways. But then they don't re-sign John Sullivan, their center. They don't re-sign Phil Lodeholt, the right tackle. And then you go get Kirk Cousins, but to what avail? They were terrible on the offensive line.
I mean, so you got the Green Bay Packers are not going to do what the Minnesota Vikings have done because the Green Bay Packers are winners. So let's start there. And yes, they have a great offensive line.
The point is that they're just going to. The point is that there's only one way for the Packers to do this. They got to hit gold in the draft. They're not signing anybody.
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, first of all, they signed Zadarius Smith.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are opportunities out there in free agency to get a guy who is a hugely impactful player. And so that's true. But yeah, that's what the league is. You got to draft really well. The good thing for Green Bay, to me, is this. They're I don't know if they're going to be 28th or 29th in the draft order this year, but one of those two. They're going to be down at the bottom. But also, if you need linebackers and receivers, that's usually a pretty good place to get some really good guys because, you're not trying to find a quarterback. You're not trying to find an elite offensive lineman yet. Now, if somebody's there, certainly get them because the depth that you need is always the case when it comes to the offensive line. But, they have an opportunity to actually get better in areas of need, even late in the draft. I think that's a good thing. How much better are they going to get compared to other teams who are also presumably going to be trying to answer the exact same questions everybody is. That's the question, and we'll find out soon enough.
One final note, because I know we got to get out. Mike Person, offensive lineman for the San Francisco 49ers. He's a Glendive native, a Montana State alum, and he will be a little gray area here. By my count, there's been 8 previous Montana natives that have played in the Super Bowl, but that's if you count Brock Osweiler. Brock Osweiler was actually technically born in Coeur d'Alene, but he went to grade school in Big Fork and high school in Kalispell. So I consider him a Montanan.
Sure.
I don't really know what regardless. So it's either 8 or 9. Very rare thing. Also the 6th MSU alum to play in the Super Bowl. And it's Mike Person specifically, perhaps more than any other player that has any sort of Montana ties. What a story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mike Person came to Montana State as a half scholarship guy and ended up being the captain on the 2010 Big Sky Championship team, which was the first of 3 straight for the Cats. He was the pillar that helped them get the thing rolling under Rob Ash. And then when he gets to the NFL, he's a 7th-round draft pick by the 49ers. But Mike Person literally went down to the very last day. You could only be on practice squads in the NFL for a certain amount of time.
3 years, I think.
3 years. And he went down to the very last day that you could be on a practice squad. And it was either the phone is going to ring or my NFL career is over. And it rang, and he gets a chance with the St. Louis Rams. He'd already been cut by multiple franchises, multiple teams. And he gets to St. Louis, and he plays his way on the active roster for just 1 week. Then an injury falls down, and then he gets a chance to start. He's overwhelmed. He's overmatched at first. And then he has to fight his way to make the roster the next year. They try to out-sign him. But then because of one 6-week stretch where he was actually starting towards the second season with the Rams, then he gets a shot with the Falcons as a true starter. They sign him to the veteran minimum, and he goes in as a starter. And now that was with the Falcons. Now here he is back full circle in San Francisco, and he's been this is his second year as a starter. When it's all said and done, he was cut 5 times. He's played for 6 different teams, 2 of them twice. He was released in the middle of the season 3 different times, and now here he is, 34 years old, playing in his first Super Bowl.
Yeah. By the way, great story. He joined us on the ESPN Roundtable last spring. You can hear our interview with Mike Person at SkylineSportsMT.com. It's part of the Big Sky Breakdown series there, but it's certainly worth the listen, and really happy for him, man. That's awesome that he gets this opportunity. Very few do, obviously, and particularly when it's, when you're not Nick Bosa or Dee Ford, when you take the path less traveled, and that has made all the difference, as the great Robert Frost once said. There you go. Very good, Coulter. Thank you. We'll take a quick break. On the other side, got some high school stuff for you, some wrestling things to go along, as well as the first loss for one Missoula area high school in hoops. Right after this, the Polaris New Year's sales event is on now, and it's the time to find your perfect ride at Kurtz Polaris, with financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months and savings up to $3,500. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and on Highway 83 in Sealy. The mountains are full of snow, and Kurtz has all the best machines, apparel, and accessories to take full advantage of the season. Online, KurtzPolaris.com. The most fun you can have in snow. Kurtz Polaris. Winner awaits.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up?
Pizza. Stop by Town Pump today and quench that craving with a 32-ounce fountain drink for only $1.19. And did I say pizza? In the deli, grab a stuffed pizza wedge, only $3.49. If you're craving it, Town Pump has it right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, oh yeah.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
There's a saying, opportunity never knocks twice. When you're ready to take advantage of your next opportunity, look to your local bank. Opportunity Bank of Montana. Opportunity Bank offers options for mortgage loans, small business loans, equipment financing, agriculture, and more. Our experienced team can provide solutions to help you welcome your next big opportunity. There's nothing like the feeling of progress. So let's get started today. Come see us at your local Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
This is Tom Skerritt for the Borgen Project. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour are children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to borgenproject.org. That's BORGEN project.org.
Are you interested in putting solar panels on your roof? Do you want the latest on Montana's renewable energy policies? The Montana Renewable Energy Association is a leading voice for renewable energy education and advocacy in Montana. From community-based clean energy events to advocating at the Montana legislature, they work to ensure Montana's future is powered by the sun, wind, and earth. Find out more about MREA and join as a member by visiting montanarenewables.org or calling 406-214-9405.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening. Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez, ESPN Sports Center. The San Francisco 49ers and Kansas City Chiefs surged through Championship Sunday, punching their respective tickets to the Super Bowl with dominant wins. Glendive native Mike Person will become the 9th native Montanan to play in the sport's biggest game. Person, an offensive guard for the 49ers, helped blast hole after hole as San Francisco rushed for a gaudy 285 yards and averaged nearly 7 yards per carry on their way to a 37-20 rout over the Green Bay Packers. Raheem Mostert rushed for 220 yards and 4 scores, including 3 in the first half, as the Niners raced out to a 27-0 lead at the break.
Person will be the 9th native Montanan and the 6th Montana State alum to play in the Super Bowl. San Francisco into the Super Bowl for the first time since 2012 and the 7th time in franchise history.
In the AFC Championship game, Patrick Mahomes threw for 3 touchdowns, and Tyrann Mathieu spearheaded a defensive effort that helped Kansas City stuff the run game of the Tennessee Titans on their way to a 35-24 victory. Kansas City advances to the Super Bowl for the first time in 50 years since Super Bowl IV in 1969.
And finally, Montana split with Idaho. Montana State split with Eastern Washington in men's and women's basketball over the weekend. The Grizz men moved to 6-1 at Big Sky Play with a 67-63 win over the Vandals. Lady Grizz lost by 1 in Moscow. MSU men lost by 13 to Eastern Washington. The MSU women won 89-85 in double overtime against Eastern.
Couple of things to cover at the high school level with you. It's Tootell Nuanez, 1029 ESPN Radio. Also SWX Montana. Also, you can check us on the YouTube. We got the Tootell Nuanez YouTube channel. You can watch the show there in the comfort of your own internet. Very nice. Golder, it's time for our Prep Extra segment. It's brought to us by the Farmers State Bank, your Montana bank since 1907.
I want to do a little call to action here before we get to this Prep Extra. Thanks, Farmers State Bank, for being a part of it. In the Sports Center there, it said 9 Montanans that have played in the Super Bowl. So by my list, Dwan Edwards of Columbus, Brock Osweiler of Kalispell, Brock Coyle of Bozeman, Dane Fletcher of Bozeman, Rich Dennison, who I can't remember where he's from, but I think he played at Colorado State, Pat Ogren, Pat Donovan, Jerry Kramer. Those last four guys were...
And now Mike Person.
Now Mike Person. Those last four guys didn't go to... They were from Montana. They went to school outside of the state for college and then went to the NFL. The Montana State alums, Jan Stenerud, Ron East, Sam McCullum, who he's kind of in that same area as Brock Osweiler's is. Sam McCullum moved to Montana when he was in high school. He went to Flathead High School as well and ended up playing in the Super Bowl. Tony Bodie, Dane Fletcher, and Mike Person. So 6 Bobcats. I've been really trying to find Grizz. Brock Coyle, at least to my knowledge, is the only Montana native who played at the University of Montana who's played in the Super Bowl. That's pretty cool. The only other Grizz I could think of that has played in the Super Bowl is Jimmy Ferris. Played for the New England Patriots. Yeah. I even texted former sports information director Dave Guffey, and he said that Jimmy Ferris was the other one he could think of too. So my call to action for you, whether you're listening on the radio or on SWX,
the info, Coulter?
I want to know if anybody out there knows of, first of all, any other native Montanans besides the ones that I named that maybe went to school elsewhere or whatever that played in the Super Bowl, and also any University of Montana alums that then went and played in the Super Bowl.
Or other Montana State.
Or other Montana State, too. I'm pretty confident in the Montana State list.
Okay.
The other one mentioned, Bill Kohler, coached in the Super Bowl for the Denver Broncos. He's an MSU alum as well. But give us a call, 329-1899, because I would love to know the
Tim
true...
Houck, of course.
Tim Houck coached the Super Bowl. There's a lot of guys for the Grizz that barely missed it, right? Like Mike Tillman played for the Vikings in the late 60s, but then went on and played for the Oilers and the Falcons, so he missed that 70s run where the Vikings won 4 NFC championship games. Tim Houck barely missed with the Eagles. He was with the Eagles from like...
Did you say the Vikings won 4 NFC championship games in the 70s?
They played in 4 Super Bowls in the 70s, yes. Yes, they lost all 4, in case you were wondering. Anyways, give us a call, 329-1899, if you know any other native Montanans or University of Montana alums that have played in the Super Bowl, because this is a stat that I'm pretty confident in, but in case we miss somebody, you never know. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that know a lot of stuff, so just in case.
Very good. Coulter, a few local winners at the Jug Beck Classic Wrestling Tournament. Helena Capital upset number 2 Missoula Sentinel in boys hoops, by the way. And Missoula Hellgate girls, they're 7-1. They're number 2 in the state. And also an update, like I said, in the wrestling for the Jug Beck Classic, and also the MHSA has voted to allow girls in not girls into wrestling, but to set up girls wrestling. Girls have been wrestling and boys wrestling for a while now, and I'm interested in this. I'm wondering about the numbers of this, Coulter, because a wrestling team, I mean, how many different, I don't know how many different weight classes there are on the boys' side, but it's a number. I mean, it's, got to be 7-8 of them at least. And so I would think, I'm interested to know how many schools are going to have enough participants on the girls' side to fill up the classifications, if you're going to have less classifications to match maybe the numbers that would be, and also just how big of a demand is there out there for how many girls want to wrestle and participate in that. So I think that's you would think that those questions certainly would have been asked and talked about in the discussions leading up to this vote. But I'm interested to see how it actually shakes out when they put this into play. Yeah,
I mean, this news broke just about an hour before our show, so I haven't been able to do research into the specifics. I wouldn't be surprised if it was more like you had like boxing style weight classes where you're a welterweight or you're a light heavyweight or you're a heavyweight or something, not the specific weight.
You're not at 122.
So maybe say, for example, girls between 125 and 145 are in the welterweight category or whatever it might be. But it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see what the numbers are like. I mean, I'm sure that in some, especially a little bit less metropolitan, quote unquote, by Montana standards, towns, there could be a lot of gals that are ready to lace them up. We'll see. In terms of the boys wrestling, the Missoula Big Sky is having a great year. They're probably one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the state. They should be in the mix for a trophy. It's been a long time since a Missoula team won a state championship in wrestling, at least 25 years, maybe longer.
But even just being in the mix, especially with some of the schools with such high enrollments, would be a huge accomplishment. But Bridger Hall is a good story. He placed fourth at the Class AA state meet last year at Hellgate, and then this is kind of the open enrollment thing is a controversial thing in Missoula, certainly. And Big Sky has really suffered, especially in basketball. I mean, Cam Lawrence went to Hellgate this offseason. It just fortify an already stacked Hellgate team and leave a Big Sky team that only won one game last year kind of high and dry. But on the other side, Big Sky has established itself as the wrestling power. So they got Bridger Hall in. He won his weight class. He won the 171-pound weight class at the Jugbeck Rocky Mountain Classic over the weekend. That's 30 teams from around the region. So that's a huge deal to win that thing. And his teammate, Hunter Meisen, also was a champion at the Jugbeck Classic. The Tom LaProuse and Bozeman, the Jugbeck, those are kind of the big invitational tournaments. And then you start to get into like the city meet, the divisional meet. But we're ramping up when it comes to wrestling. And Big Sky deserves some credit for being, I mean, that's probably their best sport right now going at Big Sky as far as winter sports goes. So good job by the Big Sky Eagles in terms of wrestling. And then in high school hoops, Missoula Sentinel got off to a 7-0 start, just like Missoula Hellgate. But the Spartans lost 72-59 to Parker Johnson, who's Mackenzie Johnson's little brother. Mackenzie Johnson, point guard for the Lady Grizz.
Yep.
He had 17 points to Pace Capital. The Bruins went on an 18-6 run in the fourth quarter, and so Sentinel suffers their first loss. Helena Capital was ranked number 5 last week. They're sure to be probably top 3 this week after knocking off the second-ranked Spartans.
72-59, by the way, the final.
72-59. Alex Germer, who's the younger son of Montana offensive line coach Chad Germer, he has emerged. Chad's a huge guy. He played in the NFL for a moment in time and has been on and off the offensive line coach at Montana for the better part of 20, even 25 years. And one of his sons, Nick Germer, has been playing for the Montana football team. He's actually not on the roster now, so I'm not sure. We need to confirm what his status is with the Grizz or not. But Alex Germer, the younger Germer, he's a real Division I basketball recruit. I mean, he got offered by Montana State to play hoops, and so he had 27 points in that game. But his recruitment will be fun to watch because I don't think people really necessarily expected Chad Germer to have a basketball playing son.
This was the thing too. I watched Alex play basketball. And if you know Chad Germer and you know what Chad Germer looks like, he's a house.
I mean, he's
a proper offensive lineman, okay? Yeah. You're right. And Alex Germer's a big kid, tall, but he's a straight basketball body. I mean, you talk about
Nick was a very good basketball player too.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he decides to do. I don't know what his football prospects are. And again, a guy with that size and that lineage, he'd probably get pretty big if he wants to at some point in his life. But a very good basketball player, like you said, and 27 points for Sentinel in the loss. Hardin, they beat Lewistown, dominated them 88-40. It felt very much like the San Francisco Green Bay game here. Famous left hand, 25 points in this basketball game for kid who's one of the best players in the state, any level. And if you get a chance to watch Hardin play and watch Famous Left Hand go to work, it's pretty good. 25 points in that game against Lewistown on the boys' side.
I'm interested. I'll give you guys an update because I'm going to read this tonight. But 406mtsports.com, Vic Flores of the Billings Gazette is actually a guy I used to work alongside when he was in Idaho Falls. He wrote a feature about Famous Left Hand, and it's titled Being Famous, Brushes with Death Have Strengthened Hardin's Famous Left Hand. First of all, what a headline. Second of all, brushes, multiple, with death. I mean, I don't know what the details are. I'm going to read this and report back. But it sounds as if the kid has had a tumultuous life, but he's an outstanding player. I mean, they were state champions when he was a sophomore, and they were the runner-up a year ago, and seems as if Hardin has the inside track once again. So just for his name alone, he's always going to be memorable around the state of Montana, but it seems as if he's the next great. Yeah. I mean, there's been so many great and legendary Native American basketball players in the state of Montana, and Famous Left Hand is atop of that list right now.
Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. It's our Prep Extra segment. It's brought to us by the Farmers State Bank. Hey, loan approvals are local for personal, mortgage, and commercial loans. That means less red tape and faster turnaround times for you, the Farmers State Bank. take a quick break, come around, finish out the show. Couple of things to get to. Dante Olson, where's he at? As he's heading in towards the NFL draft end. An update on the Boston LA Laker basketball game. We'll be bringing you Celtics Lakers on ESPN Radio at the conclusion of the show next.
Now, the Montana Club's happy hour features BOGO beverages. Our expertly mixed cocktails, microbrews, domestics, and wine are buy one, get one free 7 days a week from 3 to 5:30. Stop in on Friday for Montini night. Sip on a top shelf martini for only $6, 5:30 to close. When you've worked hard all day and are ready to relax, the Montana Club has got you covered with BOGO happy hour 7 days a week, 3 to 5:30 on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Colter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
When the mountains are calling, a Floco Mocha is just what you need to hit the road. Florence Coffee serves an exclusive, rich, all-natural chocolate blend for a mocha like no other. Top it off with real whipped cream, and you're set for whatever your day has in store. Get your Floco Mocha at any of our locations throughout western Montana and go to florencecoffeeco.com.
The best flavor under the big sky. Florence Coffee Company.
Hey guys, it's Ryan and Coulter from Tootell and Nuanez here to tell you about our brand new project that we are so excited to release, Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree, the podcast series with all of the living coaches in the history of the University of Montana men's basketball team.
From the legendary godfather of the coaching tree, Judd Heathcote, a string of some of the most successful coaches in college basketball had their careers start at the University of Montana.
It really is a remarkable group when you sit back and think about it and what all of these guys have accomplished throughout their careers in the game. And Coulter, I'm excited because Wednesday, our first one comes out, Jim Brandenburg.
Brandenburg was only the head coach at Montana for 2 years, but he was certainly the bridge from Judd Heathcote to Mike Montgomery, and that set the stage for the rest of this tremendous coaching tree. We'll be excited each week throughout the winter and spring to roll out Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast.
Just search Grizz Greats wherever you get your podcasts and listen all season long. Grizz Greats, a Coaching Tree podcast, is brought to you by Blackfoot Communications.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Lakers Celtics as they play middle of the first quarter. LeBron James, no points. He is not good. We will send you out to this basketball game on ESPN Radio as soon as we're done here on Tootell and Nuanez. It's great to be with you. Happy to have you on board or to be on board with you. We appreciate that. We are broadcasting live on ESPN and SWX Montana Television. If you missed anything in the show, check it out on the podcast. The podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. Listen in, subscribe, review it. We appreciate that. It's there thanks to Blackfoot Communications and the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Do want to take a quick moment to acknowledge it is Martin Luther King Day and our respects, which we pay every single year, well, hopefully every day, every year, but particularly today to Dr. Martin Luther King, the work that he did and the work that carries on to and through this present day. We certainly acknowledge and recognize here on the show and on this day in particular. Coulter, DraftScout.com, one of a couple of entities that does some rankings of there's a lot of different ways you can do it, by school, by position, by conference, and so forth. But DraftScout puts out a top 100 list of potential NFL prospects from small schools, FCS schools, and the like. Dante Olson is number 20 on their list that they put out of FCS or lower prospects in terms of the level. That puts him, according to them, at either a 7th round or preferred walk-on type of spot.
Undrafted free agent.
Yeah. And I think that I said preferred walk-on like college. Thank you. But I think that actually is about. Now, I don't know anybody who's on the list, so I'm not sitting here saying the number 20 ranking is right. I'm saying, as I sit here right now, 7th round or an undrafted free agent is probably about right. But I think that has a very good likelihood to rise over the next couple of weeks. I mean, he led the West in tackles in the East-West Shrine game. And again, once the numbers come out, that's going to be, I think, really influential. And I expect Dante Olson to test well either in the Pro Day and or the Combine, depending on what his future looks like in that respect.
I mean, part of it's just position of need. I mean, looking at the list right now, and some of these guys, I can tell you, they're probably better pro prospects than Dante Olson slightly, but also they just play positions where teams are going to be more apt to use draft picks on. A guy like Adam Troutman from Dayton, he's widely considered the best tight end, one of, if not the best tight end prospect in this draft period. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're the best player at your position, you're going to be probably a top 100, 120 pick, you'd assume. There's also some other guys like Kyle Duggar from Lenore Rhine and Ben Barch from St. John's. Those guys, I mean, when you're playing at non-even Division II schools, like NAIA type schools, sometimes your star rises even faster because you get identified as an NFL guy, and then you get the hype as that guy with no other of your peers being that guy. So, but as far as guys that are listed ahead of him, I mean, James Robinson from Illinois State, okay, that doesn't really surprise me. The running back from Illinois State, I mean, he's outstanding. He's the best guy I saw.
Really good, yep.
Pete Guerrero from Monmouth. I mean, Dante Olson won that matchup when Monmouth played here, but Guerrero, I mean, he's productive. I can see that. Jonah Williams from Weber State, that's interesting. Rondell Carter from James Madison, that's interesting. Touchdown Charlie, the big tight end from Portland State. I mean, some of these guys, if you're in the top 20 of these small school prospects, like a guy like Cam Gill from Wagner, I've seen Cam Gill play live before. He played in Bozeman a couple years ago. He's number 17. Dante Olson's number 20. It's just all going to come down to how do you run. I mean, if Cam Gill runs a 4.7 and Dante Olson runs a 4.5, that's going to switch. If not, it's not. It's interesting, though. I saw a scout say that the Senior Bowl is generally considered the guys that they think are the best prospects, and then the East-West Shrine game is the next tier. So it's just a general rule of thumb that if you play in the Senior Bowl, you're probably projected as between a 1st and 4th or 5th round pick, and if you play in the East-West Shrine game, you're probably projected as a 4th to 7th round pick. So Dante Olson was in the second one of those. I don't know. I think he could play his way up to 4th round, and I also wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't drafted at all. We'll see. It all comes down to what happens these next 6 to 8 weeks.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting spot to be, and the places you can go. And again, all you need is one team or maybe two teams to sit there and go, yeah, this is a guy we got to have. We think this guy is really good. We think he can really play, and we're gonna use a draft pick on him. So we'll see. It'll be a fun process though, no matter what. Boys and girls, thanks for being with us today. Fun show. We send you out to Boston. The Boston Celtics tied with the Los Angeles Lakers, 17 apiece, 5:41 left in the first quarter. Send you out to PJ Carlissimo and Mark Kestisher on the call in Boston, Massachusetts for a little bit of NBA action. Only one football game left in the season. Colts, you got to start getting the hoops thing going here a little bit. Why not go old school rivalry, Celtics-Lakers? Boys and girls, enjoy. Thanks for being with us on ESPN Radio on Tootell, Nuanez. We will see you tomorrow.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes and shocks and wheels and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night, because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Hockey season is in full swing, and this year, whether you're playing in the league or just enjoying watching the Missoula Junior Bruins in action, the Desperado Sports Tavern has your pre- and post-game covered. Located just down the street from the ice rink, the Desperados Hot Wings are consistently voted Missoula's best. They are also celebrated for their delicious burgers and extensive selection of beers, plus they've got all the pro hockey games on every night. So grab your friends, bring your appetite, and come warm up at the Desperado, located on South Russell across from the Y.
Hey, Gus, you ever heard of Magic Johnson?
Rings a bell.
One of the greatest basketball superstars of all time played for a man named Judd Heathcote at Michigan State. And guess what? Judd Heathcote started his career at the University of Montana.
Coulter, did you know that 2 former University of Montana head coaches have been head coaches in the NBA and 1 on Team USA?
Isn't that amazing?
And